Hello and welcome to today's installment of the Daf Yomi, Daf 6, Amud A of Menachot, Menachot, Tractate Menachot. So let's go. What is notable about diverse kinds? It is notable in that its mitzvah is in this manner, since the belt of the priestly vestments must be sewn by diverse kinds. By contrast, there is no mitzvah sacrifice specifically a terefa. Rav Sheish, the son of Rav Idi, said, the halacha that a terefa is unfit for sacrifice must be derived from the verse, because it can be said, let this claim be derived by the analogy from the common element of two sources as follows. With regard to the question about what is notable about pinching, it is notable in that its sanctity prohibits it. One can respond, fat and blood prove this consideration is not enough to reject the fortiori inference, as these are prohibited before they are sanctified and are nevertheless permitted for the Most High. Similarly, with regard to the question what is notable about fat and blood, they are notable in that they come from an item that is generally permitted, i.e. the animal from which they come is itself permitted for consumption. One can apply pinching proves that this consideration is insufficient for rejection of the fortiori inference, as a bird that was killed by pinching is entirely prohibited for eating, and yet a pinched bird is permitted to the altar. Rav Sheisha concludes, and accordingly the inference has reverted to its starting point. The aspect of this case is not like the aspect of that case, and the aspect of that case is not like the aspect of this case. The common element is that they are prohibited for consumption to an ordinary person and are nevertheless permitted for the Most High. Therefore, I'll also bring a case of a terefa and say, even though it is prohibited for consumption to an ordinary person, it should be permitted for the Most High, it is therefore necessary to derive from the verse that a terefa is unfit for sacrifice. Gemara rejects this. What's notable about that common element is notable in that with regard to fat and blood and pinching, in both cases its mitzvah is performed in this manner. Rather, Rashi said, necessary to derive the halacha of a terefa from a verse, because one can say that the refutation of a fortiori inference is present from the outset. Rashi elaborates, from where do you wish to derive the halacha that a terefa is unfit for sacrifice? You wish to derive it from the fortiori inference from the case of a blemished animal, as a blemished animal is permitted for consumption and prohibited for sacrifice. This is problematic. Rashi explains, what is notable about a blemished animal? It is notable that with regard to blemishes, the Torah rendered those who sacrifice like that which is sacrificed, i.e. a blemished priest may not sacrifice an offering, just as a blemished animal is unfit for sacrifice. This is Leviticus chapter 22. This cannot be said with regard to a terefa, as a priest with a wound that will cause him to die within 12 months may perform the temple service. It is therefore necessary to derive from the verse the fact that a terefa is unfit for sacrifice. Rav Ahasava said to Ravasi, but an animal born by caesarean section proves that this is a fortiori inference that cannot be rejected based on that consideration. As with regard to it, that the Torah did not render those who sacrifice like that which is sacrificed, since an animal born by caesarean section is unfit for sacrifice, whereas a priest born in such a manner may perform the temple service. And yet, an animal born by caesarean section is permitted for consumption to an ordinary person, prohibited for the Most High. If so, one cannot reject the fortiori inference, because with regard to blemishes, the Torah rendered those who sacrifice like that which is sacrificed. Why then is the verse necessary to derive that the terefa is unfit? Rashi responds, what is notable about an animal born by caesarean section is notable in that such an animal is not sanctified with firstborn status, whereas the firstborn animal that was born as a terefa is sanctified. Accordingly, without the verse, one might have concluded that a terefa may be sanctified. Allah Hasava answers, a blemished animal proves that this is not the decisive consideration, as it does become sanctified with the sanctified firstborn, and it too is permitted for consumption and prohibited for the Most High. And if you say what's notable about a blemished animal, it is notable in that with regard to it, the Torah rendered those who sacrifice like that which is sacrificed. One can respond, an animal born by caesarean section prove that this consideration is not decisive. The priest born by caesarean section may perform the temple service. Rav Ahasava concludes, and therefore this inference has reverted to its starting point. The aspect of this case is not like the aspect of that case, and the aspect of that case is not the aspect of this case. The common element is that they are permitted for consumption to an only person and prohibited for the Most High. And all the more so, a terefa which is prohibited to an only person should be prohibited for the Most High. If so, the derivation from a verse is unnecessary. Rav Ashi refutes the proof of Rav Ahasava. What is notable about that common element? Notable that in their general prohibition was not permitted, since blemished animals and those born by cesarean section are never permitted for sacrifice. Will you say that the same applies to a terefa, whose general prohibition was permitted, as will be explained? Accordingly, it is necessary to derive from the verse that a terefa is unfit for sacrifice. Rav Hassan of Rava said to Rav Ashi, this terefa whose general prohibition was permitted, what is it? I.e., to what case is this referring? If we say it's referring to the pinching of a bird burnt offering, Makina the Olas Hove, to ensure that the act of pinching, i.e., the severing of a bird's gullet and windpipes and monum occurs while the bird is still alive, the priest first cuts the spinal cord and neck bone, leaving most of the flesh of its neck intact. At this point, the bird becomes a terefa, as the priest inflicts a mortal wound upon it. The priest then severs one of the simonim of the bird in the case of a sin offering, or both simonim in the case of a burnt offering, so severing a majority of the flesh surrounding its neck as well. Sichon 21a. Only a bird offering, which is killed by means of pinching on the back of its neck, is within the terefa prior to its death. By contrast, bird killed through ritual slaughter, which is performed on the front side of the neck, is not in the terefa. The simonim are severed already at the initial stage of slaughter. See Rashi Chunin 20b for the Most High, whereby a bird is initially rendered a terefa at the start of the pinching process, and nevertheless is sacrificed upon the altar, and the same may be said of a blemished animal as well. With regard to birds, it is permitted to sacrifice the blemished bird. This is in accordance with halacha that the requirement that an offering must be unblemished and male applies to animal offerings, but no requirement that an offering must be unblemished and male in the case of bird offerings. Rather, this permitting the general prohibition found in the context of terefa is referring to the halacha that the pinching of a bird sin offering renders it permitted to the priest for consumption despite the fact that it was not slaughtered by cutting its neck with a knife. This claim can be refuted as well. As the priest received their portion from the table of the Most High, i.e. they partake of the sin offering only because it was permitted for sacrifice upon the altar. Accordingly, there was no difference between a terefa due to pinching and a blemished bird, as both were released from the general prohibition in this regard, since both are permitted for sacrifice upon the altar, and both are therefore permitted for consumption by the priest. Consequently, a fortiori inference remains valid. The fortiori inference remains valid, and the verse is unnecessary. Rather, refute the fortiori inference like this. What is notable about that common element is notable in that with regard to both a blemished animal and one born by caesarean section, their blemish is noticeable, and the blemished animal is visibly blemished. And it is well known when an animal is born by caesarean section. Will you say that they can serve as a source of the halacha of a terefa, whose blemish is not necessarily noticeable? To that reason, the verse of the herd, Leviticus 1:3, was necessary to teach and terefa is unfit for sacrifice. After trying to prove why a derivation from a verse is necessary, the more questions the very source provided by the Bryce on 5b for the disqualification of a terefa, i.e. the verse of the herd, Leviticus 1:3, but is the halacha that terefa is unfit for sacrifice derived from here? Right from here, i.e. from the verse, from the well-watered pastures of Israel, Ezekiel 45:15, from which it is derived that an offering may be brought only from that which is permitted to the Jewish people. Alternatively, this halacha can be derived from a verse discussing animal tithe offerings. Whatever passes under the rod, the tenth shall be holy for the Lord. Verse 27:32. This teaches that all animals may be sacrificed as the animal tithe, including the terefa, as it does not pass under the rod on account of its weakness. And the sages derive from this halacha that a terefa is unfit for any type of offering. The Gemara responds, all of these verses are necessary because if the disqualification of terefa was derived from the verse of the well-watered pastures of Israel, I would say that this verse serves to exclude terefa only in the case where it did not have a period of fitness, e.g. if it was born a terefa and was therefore never fit for sacrifice. This is similar to the case of the fruit of a tree during the first 3 years of its planting, orla. So all is prohibited to eat or derive benefit from the fruit that grows on the tree during the first 3 years after the tree was planted. See Leviticus 19:23. This prohibition applies only to the fruit, but not to other parts of the tree. In addition, the prohibition does not apply to trees planted as a fence for property or as a wind buffer rather than for their fruit. and diverse kinds planted in a vineyard. Kilei hakerem is prohibited to plant or maintain other crops in a vineyard in addition to the grapes. Deuteronomy 22:9. In contrast to the prohibition against a mixture of diverse kinds, the prohibited crop grown in a vineyard may not be eaten or used. It renders the entire vineyard prohibited, and all the produce must be burned. Whose disqualification derived from this verse. With regard to Torah that had a period of fitness, one might say that it should be fit. Therefore, the merciful one writes, whatever passes under the rod, to teach that all animals that do not pass under the rod are unfit for sacrifice, even if they were once fit. The Gemara continues, and if the merciful one had written only whatever passes under the rod, I would say that this verse serves to exclude Torah only where it's rendered Torah and its owner subsequently sanctified it. This is similar to the case of animal tithe, as this verse is teaching that a Torah cannot be subsequently sanctified as a tithe. But if the owner sanctified it, and it was subsequently rendered Torah, which means that at the time it was sanctified it was fit, one might say that it should be fit. Therefore, the merciful word of the herd to teach that even an animal that became a Torah after the Lord sanctified is unfit for sacrifice, accordingly all three verses are necessary. Mishnah. Both the meal offering of a sinner and all other meal offerings with regard to which the one who removed their handful, with regard to any meal offering, if the one who removed his handful was unfit to perform the temple service, often is qualified. Ramban Sefer Vod Hilchot Pesulim Makdashim 11:1 was a non-priest. Azar, a non-priest defines anyone who is not a male descendant of Aaron. Temple service performed by such a person is not valid. Ramban Sefer Vod Hilchot Beis Hamikdash 9:1, or a priest who was an acute mourner, an onain. Acute mourner, temple service performed by an acute mourner is not valid. Ramban Sefer Vod Hilchot Mikdash 2:6-7. Whose relative died, who was not yet buried, or a priest who was ritually impure, who missed that day. One who missed that day with regard to a ritually impure priest who immersed himself and performed the temple service before sunset of the same day, his service is not valid, and that's from the Rambam Sefer Vod Hilchot Beis Hamikdash 4:4, and was waiting for nightfall for the purification process to be completed, or a priest lacking the requisite priestly vestments. Mechusa begodim, a priest lacking the requisite priestly garments. A temple service is performed by a high priest while he was not wearing the 8 priestly vestments, or by an ordinary priest without his 4 priestly vestments, are not valid because they lack the requisite priestly vestments. Rambam Sefer Vod Hilchot Kilei Hamikdash 10:4, or a priest who had not yet brought an atonement offering. The service is performed by one who lacks atonement, i.e. one who has not yet brought an atonement offering to complete the purification process, are not valid. That's Rambam Sefer Vod Hilchot 4:5. To complete the purification process, or a priest who does not wash his hands and feet. The services performed by a priest who does not wash his hands and feet are not valid. Rambam Sefer Vod Hilchot Beis Hamikdash 5:1. From the water in the basin prior to performing the temple service, or an uncircumcised priest, an Arel, an uncircumcised, the services of an uncircumcised male are not valid, even if he is descendant of Aaron. Rambam Sefer Vod Hilchot Beis Hamikdash 6:8, or originally impure priest, Tomei. The service of originally impure priest is not valid. Rambam Sefer Vod Hilchot Beis Hamikdash 4:1. Or a priest who removed the handful while sitting, or while standing not on the floor of the temple but upon vessels. What does that mean? The temple service performed by a priest while he was sitting is not valid. A priest must stand on the floor of the temple while performing the service. If something interposes between his feet and the temple floor, e.g. if he performs the service while standing upon a vessel, upon an animal, or upon the feet of another, his service is not valid. Rambam Sefer Vod Hilchot Beis Hamikdash 5:17. Just as the service vessel sanctifies the items placed inside it, so too, before the temple sanctifies the service of the priest performing the service upon it. Accordingly, just as the service vessel sanctifies only when there is no interposition between it and the item placed inside it, so too the temple floor sanctifies the service of the priest only when there is no interposition between it and the priest's feet. Therefore, the service is performed by a priest standing upon the vessels, animals, or the feet of others are disqualified. See Tavachim 24a. Upon an animal or upon the feet of another person. In all these cases, the meal offerings are unfit for sacrifice. If the priest removed the handful with his left hand, If a priest removed a handful from the meal offering with his left hand, it is not valid, as all sacrificial rites must be performed with the right hand. 5:18. The meal offering is unfit. Ben Betera says he must return the handful to the vessel that contains the meal offering and again remove the handful, this time with his right hand. If a priest removed a handful of flour and a stone, a grain of salt or pinch, correct, a pinch is sufficient a small item or fraction. The word is of unknown origin, although it is close to the Greek keration, a unit of measurement or a small horn. The word carat comes from the same Greek source, although the Greek word itself might have a Semitic origin. Some sources assert that the word koret is a slight variation of the Hebrew term keretz, which means a slice or small piece of frankincense. Frankincense included by the Torah among the ingredients that collectively form the incense is commonly identified as a sap secreted from the trees of the genus Boswellia. Some maintain that it is specifically the sap of the species Boswellia sacra found in the southern Arabian Peninsula, and while others suggest that it is the sap of species Boswellia foriana found in eastern Africa. A verse in Isaiah 66 states that frankincense comes from the kingdom of Sheba. When one cuts the bark of these trees, a sap is secreted that eventually hardens and turns into beads of frankincense. In ancient times, it was used in incense and as an ingredient in various medicines. Frankincense is burned as a part of a mixture and also by itself. There are various grades of quality of frankincense ranked according to the various types and conditions of the trees that secrete the sap. Frankincense is of the highest quality is referred to as pure frankincense. Emerging from in his hand, the meal offering is fit due to the fact that the sages said that a handful that is outsized or is lacking is unfit. What does that mean? How was a handful properly removed from a meal offering? The priest would extend his fingers over his palm of his hand and would thereby remove a handful. If he removed it only with his fingers, or if he removed it from the sides of the vessel, he should not burn that handful upon the altar, but if he did, it affects acceptance. If he took more than a handful, e.g. if his fingers were spread apart while removing the handful is disqualified. And that's from the Roman Sefer Avodah, Hilchot B'Sulei Makdashin 11:3 and Hilchot Maseh Kabbalah 13:13. The existence of one of these foreign items in the handful means that the requisite measure of flour is lacking. And which is the outside handful? It is one where he removed the handful overflowing mevorats. The root of this term, base reish sadi, denotes an item that has exceeded its boundaries. This root has the same meaning in ancient Syriac and has the same meaning as the Greek word brazo, which means to boil, froth, or ferment, in a manner in which his fingers do not hold the flour. And which is the lacking handful? It is the one where he removed the handful with the tip of his finger. The Gemara asks, why do I need a mission to teach both the meal offering of a sinner and all other meal offerings? That it teach all the meal offerings with regard to which the one who removed their handful was a non-priest or acute mourner. Why does the mission single out the case of a meal offering of a sinner? The Gemara responds, it was necessary for the mission to teach halacha in this manner, and according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, as is taught in the Bible, Rabbi Shimon says, by right, the meal offering of a sinner should require oil and frankincense like all the meal offerings, and sinner will not profit. And for what reason does it not require oil and frankincense? So that his offering will not be of superior quality. And likewise, by right, the sin offering of forbidden fat, i.e. the offering brought by one who unwittingly ate the forbidden fat of the domesticated animal, should require libations, so that sin will not profit. And that's gone into the next Amud B. Wish you a very good day and all the best. Bye.